Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about the new Martin Scorsese film that you can see right now in theaters and eventually be able to stream on Apple TV, and that is the film Killers of the Flower Moon. This film is based on a true story. In this movie, you guys, if you don't know anything about it, basically it's based on the real case, really, from the FBI where a man marries into a Native American marriage, and these murders keep happening in this area where oil is found, where the Native Americans lived. The Osage County is what I believe it's called, and all these murders keep happening. There's clearly some kind of oil money that somebody's trying to achieve from killing off these Native Americans, being a part of their inheritance, so they get that money and stuff like that. So over the course of this movie, the murders get bad enough where the FBI does get involved. Leo DiCaprio and his uncle, unfortunately, are a part of this murder scheme. And so, over the course of this movie, they're trying to figure out what to do, try how to explain themselves, how to make themselves look as innocent as possible, because they do have a hand in some of the reasoning behind why these murders are taking place. And over the course of this movie, the FBI is trying to figure this out. They're also kind of in the early stages of the FBI, too. So it's one of those things where they have to kind of take things slowly. They really just kind of have to interact with as everybody as they can to kind of get all the clues and hints that they can as to why these were occurring. And so over the course of this movie, we figure out who exactly were responsible for these murders. Um, who was the person in charge? How does that put Leo DiCaprio's marriage in trouble since he's married to a Native American woman on the Osage County land? All these things happen over the course of Killers of the Flower Moon. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this movie. It's not a I don't think it's my favorite Scorsese film. I think there is better films that he's made, but I think this is a good movie. I think there's a lot of good things about it. Definitely a lot of negatives too, though, so I'm going to go over those here in a little bit. But for those who like Martin Scorsese's work, for those who like kind of the performances he gets out of Leo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, his usual people, I would say, really, you're going to have a good time with this movie. Obviously, Lily Gladstone is a very standout performance here. I guess she's done some TV work before this film and done some really, really small indie films as well. But this is kind of her first wide release movie. So it's great to see another, up and coming actress basically being able to perform a really great character. And that's something that's really strong in this movie. So for my positives and negatives of this movie, some of the character development I thought was very good here. We get a lot of development out of Leo DiCaprio. We kind of see him grow as a character. We get to see his wife. I believe her name was Molly. We get to see her grow as a character. Even with Robert De Niro's character, kind of one of the more villainous characters of this movie, there's reasonings behind why he's doing what he's doing. He has to always remind people kind of the good stuff that he does for them. He's a very manipulative character. There's even a lot of scenes where him and Leo DiCaprio kind of don't see head to head on certain things. But he's one of those characters where you do understand kind of what he brings to the community by being around, but what he also, how he also destroys the community by being around as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with his character. There's reasons that are good for keeping him around, but there's also ultimately bad reasons too for why he is living a part of that land and living a part of that life and being a part of these people's lives that are ultimately being killed off over the course of this movie. But there's just some great character development here. It's not just black and white. It's not just yes or no or any of that kind of stuff. It's not just smiley faces, frowny faces. It really is characters that really get fleshed out over the course of this movie. This is a 3.5-hour movie, so I'm going to go over that here in a little bit in my negatives. But as far as character development goes, I thought Martin Scorsese did a great job with his script. It's also written by Forrest Gump screenwriter Eric Roth, and you can definitely tell because that film had a lot of great character development as well in it. So great character development, definitely one of the strongest strengths of this movie for sure. I also like the intelligence given to most of these characters. There's a lot of things with Leo DiCaprio where he definitely has to factor in a lot of stuff with his family, with his wife's medicine, since his wife is diabetic. One character I really, really liked as far as intelligence went was the wife, Molly, played by Lily Gladstone again. Very smart character, definitely picks up on a lot of stuff, definitely thinks about the right stuff, definitely approaches things the right way. You really admire her character. She's definitely by no means dumb at all. She really does pick up on a lot of stuff in this movie. She does. She has the right concerns about the stuff going on in her community and how that might impact her and impact her family and stuff like that. And even with Robert De Niro's character, like I said, one of the villainous characters of this movie, there's things going on with him that you do kind of respect because he does put a lot of intelligence and time and thought into the stuff that's going on with him in this community as well. So definitely a lot of smart characters written here. I appreciate just how smart the characters were written over the course of this movie. And overall, you do really feel sorry for these Osage County residents. Some of the terrible stuff they had to go through, specifically people who are after the oil money, you really do feel sorry for them. You really do feel like this something like this should have never happened. You really also kind of feel sorry for the FBI because they were in such an early stage of solving big cases like this. That they really kind of had to pick apart every possible angle to get this case resolved. And you really, like I said, you really do feel sorry for all the county residences that this involved. It really was a pretty tragic case as to why all this was happening. I also thought the set design and kind of the overall Western vibe that Martin Scorsese goes with in this movie. It does take place in Oklahoma, so don't go into this knowing or feeling like it has to be a Western, but there's definitely elements of the Western genre here that I really appreciated. And like I said, the set design was really good. You really do feel like you're back in the 1920s, witnessing this story taking place, witnessing, people reading books instead of watching television and stuff like that. That the town festivals were kind of the one and big thing that everybody looked forward to every year, just because that was kind of the big source of entertainment at the time. So just the set design, the Western vibes, the overall feeling of this film, I thought was very well accomplished and well realized. The film also shows the dark side of history, how this really should have never taken place. This really showed kind of the bad side of people in regards to money and greed and their darker ambitions with life. So the film doesn't shy away at all from the darker sides of history. They really do a great job with that as well here. For my negatives of Killers of the Flower Moon, though, unfortunately this film is way too long. Like I said, this film clocks in at 3.5 hours. I think 3 hours and 27 minutes is what it is. So that's probably one of the longest films I've ever sat through, because I think Lawrence of Arabia, for me personally, was one of the longest films I've ever sat through, and I think that one runs close to 4 hours, I want to say. But this film is way too long. I think easily, without a doubt, if you sat down with the editor of this movie, I think you easily could have trimmed down a good solid hour of this movie. I really did feel like I was watching the director's cut version of this movie, of something of a film that I would have enjoyed more if a good solid hour was cut out of it. So there really was no warrant for why it was long as it was. I really do feel like with the right editor, you could have trimmed down another hour of this movie and made it have a more crisp runtime to it. So I thought runtime-wise, this film was way too long. I also thought the third act of this film dragged quite a bit. I would say when they start getting into the interrogations with the FBI, those scenes in particular really do drag quite a bit. It's just one of those things where by the time you reach the third act, people are anticipating an ending. They are anticipating wrapping things up. And if these interrogation scenes feel as long as they are, going back to a long runtime, that's really going to grate on people's nerves as far as just how much time this film asks of you as far as going on this journey for 3.5 hours. I also thought some of the shots of certain crucial moments, there's a scene where Leo DiCaprio's in court near the end of the movie. No spoilers, of course. I'm just trying to make a point as to why some of the shots are just not so creative in this. All it really is, and I get they're trying to show his response to certain questions in court and stuff, but literally there's this long sequence where it's just his face. It's just his face, and they're just showing kind of his basic responses. And I guess for me personally as a viewer, because the responses were so basic, they were kind of the responses you were expecting him to do for something like this. It just felt really uncreative to me, just the whole one shot, go on for 10 minutes of him just doing basic responses to things. And there's just a lot of shots throughout the movie that unfortunately feel like that, where it's just the basic shot. There's no creativity with it, with Martin Scorsese having so many years of experience behind him, and just so many clever ways of getting certain shots in his movies. There's just a lot of shots here where I feel like they're just not as creative as they possibly could have been. And also, I thought there was some moments where a lot of Native American people within the county, they subtitle a lot of it, but they also don't subtitle a lot of it either. And unfortunately, there is a lot of scenes where they're just talking in this foreign language for a long time. We never get to find out what they were saying. And obviously, some of those moments are not subtitled. So there is some frustrating times in this movie where you don't know exactly what people are saying. And either you just have to pick up on the context of the scene, or you wait until later scenes to find out what exactly some of those moments were exactly regarding, unfortunately. But overall, I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. I think there's a lot of great things about this movie. I think Martin Scorsese did do a great job with the production of this movie. But like I said, editing wise, they really need to create at a tighter runtime. The third act does drag quite a bit in this movie. There is some shots here that just don't feel as creative as some of Scorsese's earlier films, unfortunately. And there is some moments that are not subtitled at all. So as far as certain moments where you want to know exactly what people are saying. Unfortunately, some of those moments we never get to find out about, unfortunately. But 8 out of 10. Enjoyed this movie overall. Just enough flaws where I can't call it a fantastic movie, but at the same time, if you do like Martin Scorsese's work, if this kind of story interests you, if you are interested in learning about a very dark time in history during the 20s when this was happening, I think there is enough here that I could recommend that you go see this film specifically before it lands on like Apple TV and all that stuff. So 8 out of 10 for me. I enjoyed this movie, but do go into this film knowing that it's not perfect, that there is some flaws with it. 8 out of 10 for me still, though. I do recommend seeing it, but just go into it knowing that it's not a perfect film either.